She said, all I ask from you guys is to just pray. I'm getting emotional saying the story. The doctors came in and said, there's no scientific, medical explanation for this.
I think genuine prayer is the most fruitful thing that you can ever do. Through prayer, completely surrendering, instantly this happened. You can't make this up. God said to me, you're going to see a young boy walking by himself. I want you to get out of your car and pray for him. I started tearing up.
How do you guys hear God? Because for me, I'm not going to lie to you, like I thought I heard God speaking to me through like a voice. Since then, I've been kind of like, well, how do I know if that's God's voice?
This is why if you're a Christian, you have to do it in community. This is why church is so important.
God has a purpose for you and you are a child of God and God loves you. If you're open to hearing Him, you will develop into a character and a person that will be greater than you could ever imagine. Boys, I recently,
back.
so I went to Malaysia for 10 days with my missus and her family.
Trip number 73 for the year.
Yeah, so we went
and it's only January.
We went to Malaysia, and as you boys said, you know,
How
it
was
was amazing. I went for the Chinese New Year, amazing. Got to hang out with the grandparents, awesome trip.
That's great.
Ate a lot of food, and as you guys just said, you know, I've been on a lot of trips, so I thought that when I come back, I came back, and like the day after I came back on a Sunday. The Monday, I said I'm gonna do a fast for the first time in my life.
Yeah, that's solid. And this guy doing a fast was something.
Bro, I
eat
eat 4,000 calories a day.
Ever.
And I'm like, I can't go an hour or two without eating. So for me, it's a big deal, right? And I said to myself, I want to do it. And it was an amazing experience. I did a 2-day, 48-hour fast. And it was a really challenging experience, but a really good experience. And basically for me, the reason why I did it was, part of it was to kind of improve my, I guess, calories coming in. I just wanted a bit of weight loss to just trim up a little bit. I wanted to challenge myself, but also from a spiritual aspect. It's from what I've read and what I know and talking to people, it's a really good opportunity to get closer to God, to clear your head, and also to sacrifice something so that when you're not eating all the time, you have more time to be with God and to hear God. So, you know, it's crazy to think that in the last, 10, 20 years, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe more, but fasting has become such a popular thing because of now the world's fixation on weight loss and looking good and being, you know, aesthetic or whatever it is.
The science has finally caught up.
The science has finally caught up, but bro, fasting has been in the Bible
for so long.
How many years has this, how many years, you know?
Even
thousands of years,
I just looked
right?
up a verse. It's Matthew 6, 16 to 18. And Jesus says, when you fast, not if. So
Bro,
it's like a requirement
when
for
you
all
fast.
believers to fast, regardless how you feel like we have to be doing it essentially.
So the answers were there, like the guide was there how many years ago, and now science has caught up and said, wow, you know, the newest fad is if you want to improve your life, if you want to improve your digestion, if you want cell regeneration, if you want to improve your energy, clear mind, you should fast.
Bro,
we've known this.
Yeah.
We've known this.
So powerful.
It's been there.
Well, we didn't really know.
We didn't know this, but it was there.
But the
science
Bible
backs
tells
it.
you all these things to do, but
Yeah.
it doesn't tell you why, like
Yeah.
the science behind it.
Yeah.
But it's just said you should do this. And everything that it's said in there has these incredible benefits that we only find out later. It's like, oh, so it was good for
Maybe
us
it
this
was
whole
right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can live longer, live a better life, be more cleansed, like all the benefits you just said, complete cell regeneration. And now everyone's saying fasting is one of the best things you could ever do.
Yeah, bro.
It's like,
What are the, like? That's
it's
not
been
accident.
there.
It's, that's by design.
I did a few fasts last year for 3 days at a time.
Yeah.
And what you find is like the first one's a bit tricky, but then you kind of just understand how your body responds to it. And I think the key is though, like for spiritual growth, like prayerfully fasting is the number one priority. You know, you can obviously do a fast for autophagy, which happens after 3 days, which means cell regeneration. Your body eats all the bad cells and stuff. But I think if you're doing like a full on spiritual fast with the intention of like drawing close to God, denying your flesh, bro. I remember like hearing from a friend, like they had like in the 3 days they were fasting, they had random exes call them up, just all this crazy stuff happens because you're kind of like drawing yourself. Yeah, it's so close to God that things happen. I think speaking of prayerfully fasting and prayer in general, that's sort of what today's episode's about, you know.
today's episode about prayer, man.
The power of prayer.
Prayer.
I think
It's
we've all
gonna be
experienced
Let's go.
We've all experienced it in different ways. I'll give you guys a bit of a story. You know, I've been a Christian for about 3 years now, and it's funny because like as I try and leave my old life, there are certain like attachments that I'm trying to get rid of that I think I may have already, right? So things like my identity in social media, things like, you know, even the attachment to money and status and all these things. And what recently happened about 2 weeks ago, bro, this is the craziest thing, and this goes to show how powerful prayer is that I was like, I felt like a lot has been happening. You guys know what's been happening in my life. A lot of crazy stuff, like
As
health,
usual.
health
As
problems,
always.
and, yeah, and just like all this stuff. And I'm like, God, like, why are you doing this to me? And a spiritual friend of mine who lives up in Queensland, he goes, bro, have you heard of something called lamenting? I'm like,
Lamenting.
no, what's that? And he goes,
Sounds
basically,
like a
it's-
coffee.
It's not a coffee. It's basically where you kind of like cry out to God in desperation for help. It's like letting it all out essentially. And he goes, bro, like that's the first step I believe in your spiritual journey to actually overcome what you're going through. And I said, okay, sure. So I kind of just sat down one night and I just like let it all out to God. I was like, God, why am I going through this? I've been your faithful servant for 3 years. I've tried to do things holy and this is happening to me. And the ironic part is that when you just kind of like let it all out and you're so like in that point of desperation that you need God so much, he draws close to you and he starts making things happen. And so, bro, literally after I did that, the next day I'm on the treadmill at the gym and I'm thinking, okay, so like I've let it all out to God and now I actually feel like I'm not holding on to unforgiveness to God anymore. It's like I've let it all out and I'm prayerfully thinking of what to do next. And I'm like, I wonder why God like blocked a lot of blessings from last year. Like, did something happen? Was I not obedient? And so I go on YouTube and I'm like, why does God block your blessings? And I forgot the exact verse in the Bible. One of you guys might it might ring a bell, but there was a time in the Bible where there was a group of people that were trying to strive for something, but they weren't being blessed from their striving because they were doing it through their own will and they weren't putting God first in that strive for success. And bro, the message was, you have to put God first above everything you do. Like any decision you make, you have to consult and put God first. And bro, for some reason that just hit me so hard because I thought to myself, yeah, last year, the past couple of years, I was putting God first. I thought that I was in my business, career, finance, and all these things. But I was able to pinpoint areas in my life where I truly, genuinely wasn't. And then I did a prayer one night, 2 Tuesdays ago. I go, God, I give up everything. Like, I don't care if tomorrow you tell me to sell my car, I'll sell it. I give up everything. All I want to do now is live for you. I don't care
Did you
if...
sell your car?
No, I didn't get told to do that. Not yet. I wasn't, I don't have any attachment to like my career or just anything. Of course, these things are important, but I want to serve you first and foremost. And bro, the things that started happening as soon as I did this through prayer was God just showed me like 10,000 signs. Like, for example, on our last episode, we're talking about how I've been trying to create a bit of a business through my social media.
Yep.
That just happened in the space of a day. Like, just people came at me out of nowhere that I never even asked for, and they
That's
built the whole thing out for me in
crazy,
2
bro.
weeks. And I've had this resistance in my life where I haven't been able to do this for so long. Just happened. And the next thing that happened was I went to get some deliverance up in Brisbane, and bro, the demons were coming out like that. Like, there was nothing they could hold on to anymore. Whereas before, one demon would take maybe like half an hour, but it was just like that. And then the third thing is, I don't want to go into much detail, but someone sort of came into my life that I believe was from God, and some interesting stuff's happened there.
It can be revealed as the weeks go on.
Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But like, just from me, like through prayer, completely surrendering and just wanting to be obedient to God, instantly this happened. Everything
love
just
that,
started to manifest.
That's so cool to hear.
That's a lesson for people out there. Like, you really just have to humble yourself and just surrender completely through prayer.
And I think it's because God, I don't want to say rewards, but sees your genuine intentions. You cannot hide. Like, if you're operating out of selfish ambition, God can't really work with that. So that's like a big revelation to have. And I know we're talking about prayer, but like for people who don't pray or don't know what it is or what that actually looks like for us, I think for a lot of the time it's just a genuine, it's like thinking in or speaking out loud, not to yourself, but you're speaking to God, but there's no like technical babble or like specific way you have to do it. If you genuinely come out of your heart as a place of surrender, like, I genuinely want to hear from you. I've done this, and we can also attest to this, like probably over 100 times now in my life, where I'm like, all right. And you go through phases where you're you're questioning things, but there's times where you're like, I genuinely lay this down. I would love an answer. And then you're operating out of like looking for an answer if it's from God every single time. And it's not like, I know people can say like, oh, you just think it's from God. Like this would have happened whether you did pray or not. Like, you know, spiritually deep down, like you get confirmation almost where God shows it happens in a way where you cannot dispute it. And when it happens over and over and over and over and over again, you just know. So for those who've never experienced praying or don't know what's like, questioning, one of the biggest questions that me and a lot of us have who are Christian, like, was that actually God or am I just tricking myself? And maybe that's something we need to discuss, but like, it's so hard to, when God gives you an answer, there's times where you know, and there's other times where you're like questioning yourself.
You question it, yeah.
But I think through prayer and persistence over time, if you come from a genuine place, just like you were saying, God reveals it to you every single time. And people have different gifts. The way God speaks to me usually, and my girlfriend always, we were talking about this because she was saying that God doesn't speak to her through the Bible, but my gift of God speaking to me is I get a verse in my head, or I this is crazy, but I'll actually do this. All right, God, if this is meant to be, like if you're showing me a sign, give me a verse in my head, or I'll open the Bible to a page. And
everyone does that.
But I'm telling you, it happens to me every single time. The exact story.
Really?
So it's different for different people, but I think genuine prayer is the most fruitful thing that you can ever do. In any area of life to get direction.
I wanted to add a few things. First, to your point about, you know, you prayed that you would even give up your car. So I was watching this movie, which is it's a Christian movie made by Christian filmmakers called The Forge. And I told you guys to watch this movie.
Yeah.
I do recommend it to everyone. It's a really cool story. But one point that I wanted to make is one of the main guys in it was speaking to a young man, and he was talking about his experience about a similar situation, and he spoke to God and said, I'll give up anything to be closer to you. And you know what God said to him to give up? Golf. Golf. Out of all things in the movie.
Yeah.
And what he said was that he spent too much time. He goes, I used to play golf 2-3 times a day, and he spent too much time fixating on his golf, and he needed to spend that time with God.
Yeah.
And so he goes, it was the last thing. He goes, I loved golf more than anything.
Yeah.
He goes, but I had to give it up. So he goes, instead of playing 2-3 times a week, he goes, I play 2-3 times a year.
Yeah.
And he goes back to the point of like praying to see, you know, maybe there's limitations, maybe things are holding you back, but being able to surrender fully things that you might not want to. I wanted to give a cool prayer story. So this is many years back, but my mum was telling me about this. So there was a friend of hers. So my mum's in a Bible study, Christian Bible study. She goes with a bunch of ladies. You know, they read scriptures, talk about God and the Bible, right? And there was a lady, and she was pregnant, and she had a kid, right? And the kid was born with many health complications, to the point that the doctors, surgeons, whoever it was, said that, listen, the kid's not going to make it. And, you know, I don't know how many days you have, but come to peace, you know, do what you need to do, bring your family over. They're in the hospital still. Kid's not going to make it. So what this lady did is she spoke to my mum. She spoke to the Bible study, to every person she knows. She said, all I ask from you guys is to just pray. I just want you to pray with me. I'm getting emotional saying the story. And for those days, they all, every single day, prayed all day long, all night long, prayed. They told their cousins, their mums, their dogs, everyone just pray, right? And they prayed for this little boy. And you can probably guess, a few days later, the doctors came in and said, I don't know what's happened. It does not make any sense to us. There's no scientific, medical explanation for this.
Yeah.
But your son is going to make it. The scans are showing that he's making a recovery. It's going to take some time, but he's exceeded the expectations we had. He's gonna make it, and he's still living to this day. I know the kid.
Wow.
And he's like 18 now.
Oh
That's
my gosh.
crazy.
He's 18 now.
Far out.
And this is multiple doctors, like second opinion, third opinion, saying, "Mate, it's not looking good. It's far too far gone."
Oh, the power of prayer is
And
absolutely.
bro,
You
that
have
like
no idea.
my mom told me that, and I was like, "Wow!" Like this is someone I know. Like it's not like someone's told you a story that's AI made or whatever
Yeah.
to make you feel a certain way. This is someone I know, and bro, that's just one example
There's
of many that I
millions.
know, which we
Yeah.
all know, that just goes to show the power of prayer is unexplainable. We can't even
It's a
understand.
covering, bro.
But that's the power of God. So yeah, I just thought it was a beautiful story.
Wow.
And it's a moving story as well.
Wow, that's so cool.
That's
I have
incredible.
another story. But not as crazy as that, but something that happened to me through prayer. So one night after I think you might have been there, it was a church conference or something. I was actually driving home, and I just gotten healing like on my shoulder, like out of nowhere from.
You got a healing?
Yeah, like the preacher. It was on a video as well. So like they were in Melbourne praying.
You had a healing at the service?
The guy was like, "Oh, I'm gonna pray for everyone with sore shoulder." Praise my shoulder. Like I had pain for like 3 years.
Yep.
And my shoulder was like pretty much out of place like all the time, and then
Yep.
popped back in from this prayer. So I was on a super high. I was driving home,
That's crazy. Bro.
and I was almost home, and I said, "God," like I was just thanking God. I was like, "Thank you so much for that healing. If there's anything I can do to like, I feel like I'm on a high. If there's anything I can do to like say thank you, let me know." I'm about to turn into my
I know
street,
this one. I know this story. Yeah, it's cool.
and about to turn down my street, and then I felt like God was prompting me, keep driving. It's like, what the hell? Keep in mind, I've lived in this house for
Yeah.
15
And you
years.
probably never
nothing,
kept driving.
I've never kept driving in my life. I was like, the hell? Okay. So I kept driving. And I was thinking, all right, maybe I'm just going to have some nice prayer time, some thankful. And then you can't make this up. God said to me, keep driving. You're going to see a young boy, not young, like a teenager, walking by himself. I want you to get out of your car and pray for him. And I was like, that's a
What?
pretty,
the
like,
courage and boldness you need to have
that's
as well,
a
bro.
pretty weird thing. I was like, and
Yeah.
as I was saying before, I was like, okay, I'm making this up. Now I'm actually tripping myself out. This is just
Yeah.
dumb. I sound like something like
But it's
prayerful
so far
lunatic.
fetched that it's probably something you wouldn't even think
But
of.
that's why it got me, because I was like, that's very specific. Oh, and another detail, he said, he's going to be holding a fishing rod. And I was
That's
like,
right.
okay,
No
all right,
way.
let's just keep driving. So I kept driving. I drove for a couple minutes. I was like almost looking for this. I was like, okay, now I'm actually tripping. I just was
I'll go
doing this
back.
loop. I was like, all right. And then I went to, I was like, all right, God, I'm going to take this road back home. If I don't see anyone, then I must have been tripping out. But I'll take this one last detour. I was driving around for like, before this, like 5 minutes, like, okay, I haven't seen anyone. I must be wigging out.
Look at some random teenage boy with a fishing rod in the
And
middle of the night.
keep in mind, this was 11:30 p.m. at night. There was no one around, not
and
one
there's
person
no
on the
fishing near
streets.
your house.
No one. There was no one on the streets. Nowhere. Nowhere.
In the pool.
Literally. So I was like, all right, God, whatever. I drove past. I was about to go in. I was like, okay, I'll do one last lap. That's it. And I go start doing a U-turn. And as I'm driving down this main road, I see the guy that fit the description, supposedly, holding a fishing rod, walking down the street.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, okay, that's a coincidence, but it's just weird. Like, I can't be it. Like, maybe I'm tripping myself out. So I said, all right, God. I was going to do it, and then I bitched it. I was like, nah, that's so weird. I'm going to go up to a stranger at 11:30 p.m.
But
at
he had the
night.
fishing rod.
Yeah. But I
he was
still,
like a
I
young
was-
kid.
It was
You were
like,
still not
18,
convinced.
20. I was still like, no. And then I think I was trying to like get a cop out. Like, I'm such a weirdo, like, going to go up to this random guy. I was like, all right, I'll do one last loop driving down the street. And I said, if he's there, I'll stop if I drive past him.
It's a lot of last loops.
He's the king of loop.
I was looping
something.
back home, and then I
Loopholes.
went past him and I went back. And then the guy wasn't on the street. I was like, oh, thank God.
Just starts pointing at you.
And then, get this, God said, like, I pulled up the lights. I was about to turn around and go home, and then said, turn left at the lights. I was like, oh gosh, here we go.
Oh, God.
Turn left at the lights.
He's there.
There's the guy. Like, oh gosh, all right, that's too many coincidences.
Fuck, he walked fast.
I'm just gonna get out. Yeah,
Must be in a light fishing rod.
I was like, I'm just gonna get out and walk past him, and that's it. Just like,
yeah.
Oh, fancy seeing you here.
so I pulled up, walked past, and I was like, you know, when when God's speaking to you because your heart's pounding, He's telling you what to say. And then as I see the guy in the distance, God says to me, he has anxiety. I want you to talk to him about that and pray for him. And I was like, okay, whatever. Started talking to him. Hey, bro, what are you doing? Like fishing and that, just having a general chat. He was a bit like, it was this guy talking to me at 11:30 p.m. at night. I'm trying to go home. And I was like, look, I know this sounds absolutely wild, but I drove past you before and I felt like God was telling me to get out and pray for you. Is there any chance, like, I have a bit of anxiety and things like that? And like the guy started tearing up. Wow. And I was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, why do you say that? I was like, I don't know, I just feel like I should pray for you. God's told me to stop. He's like, it's so funny that you say that because the reason that I was out fishing tonight so late is because it's the only thing that can clear my mind. And I feel like there's nothing else. Like,
Far out.
I feel like I'm drowning and it's the only thing that can clear my head. So I stay out late at night because I have so much anxiety.
Wow.
I was like, look, do you mind if I'll just pray for you? He was a bit like, okay. Gave him a quick prayer. And then he was like, look, man, I really appreciate that. He seemed a lot lighter. And then he walked off. And I don't know what happened after that. But all I can say is my prayer leading to putting down my desires, saying, look, God, if there's any way I can repay this. Him having the care and the thought for this random guy who wasn't even a Christian.
And that started from another prayer.
For my healing that passed on to me to have the courage to stop.
Yeah.
That gave me the motivation to stop and hear God's voice and pray for this guy who knows what impact that had on his life. I've never seen him again.
Wow.
All from prayer
Right.
and the power of prayer. And just like that sticks with me to this day because it's the power of God's intentionality and the intricate detail that he cares about someone, even if you're not Christian, not praying, haven't even thought about him.
Wow.
He's thinking about you and he's giving you an opportunity. That guy could have walked away and said, oh, that's weird, I'll never do that. Or it could have planted a seed where he's like, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like a story of me adding to the power of prayer.
Incredible.
And that's 1, 2, 3 personal experiences just across the three of us.
And there's so many, bro.
So many stories, bro.
There's unlimited of them.
I kind of want to ask you for the viewers out there, like you say that like God spoke to you, right?
Yeah.
So like God speaks to us in many different ways. As you said, you get Bible verses or whatever it is, and for other people, like they hear a voice or maybe they see something and visions and dreams or whatever it is, right? But like, how do you guys hear God? Because for me, I'm not going to lie to you, like I've been, just being completely honest here, like since my last relationship, which I thought was going to end in marriage, I thought that it would. And I thought I heard God speaking to me through like a voice. And then when it didn't lead to marriage, I then was like, oh, was that actually God's voice? Because all these things align, but then something happened.
yeah.
But it could have still been
And-
God's voice.
But God was like, this is the person you're going to marry. And I truly believed it. And I had a very good sort of prayer life back then, right?
Yeah.
But then from that breakup, since then, I've been kind of like, well, how do I know if that's God's voice? Because I thought
Yeah, you
God
start
said to
questioning
me,
things.
I was going to marry this person, and it didn't happen. So, like, how do you guys know it's
Bro,
God?
that's
Well,
such a good question.
I was just going to
love
say,
that.
but what if God, yes, I get it. He
Because he wouldn't lie either.
You thought he said that that you were going to marry this girl, but what if you misinterpreted that? Maybe God did want you to go into that experience because he knew you were going to learn a lot from that experience to then take on into your life. And you had to go into that with the true heart of thinking, I'm going to marry this girl, because your intentions were right and your heart was in the right place. So what you got from that is actually what God wanted you to get, as opposed to him saying, you're going to marry this girl and you marry this girl.
Correct, but like I was literally hearing audibly, like God said, this is your wife, like, you're going to marry her. So how do you guys, I'm saying like this is my journey, right?
Yeah.
I don't discredit God for whatever's happened, but I'm a little bit like, okay, how do I know if this is God?
Yeah.
For me personally now, I think that this is just for me now, but I feel like what validates that it's from God is just like, almost like coincidences, bro. Like things that have been happening, what's been happening recently. That's how I'm kind of like, okay, God's like behind this. I'm kicking back and this is all just manifesting by itself.
Yep.
What do you guys think?
So
Yeah, go Bailey.
I was going to say, my opinion as well is, this is why being a believer, if you're a Christian, you have to do it in community. This is why church is so important, because I believe that you need to seek. God gives you confirmation through other people and
Yes.
spiritual leaders and guiders. just feeling like you've heard something audibly once is not enough for you to say, God told me this.
Yeah.
Because people latch onto things and you don't know. And there's also plenty of times, like give you an example in the Bible, where Abraham and Sarah thought they heard God correctly, which was, you're going to have a child. But their interpretation of the story was like, oh, we need to take this into our own hands.
Yes, correct.
So they heard God, but they interpreted it in their own earthly way.
Yeah.
So that's where
that when
community
Ishmael was born?
and
Is that when Ishmael was born?
yeah, then
Was
they
that?
had the child out of wedlock with
That's
the
right,
slave the
Yeah,
slave girl.
Slave, yeah.
And that's why confirmation through pastors. That's why the power of
Even
community.
your friends.
Asking
Yeah.
to say like, so for example, if I feel like I've heard something from God, either biblically or someone else coming to me and saying, hey, I feel this.
Yeah.
You know, God's
God
telling me
will
this
send
about
them.
you.
Yep.
Now that's a confirmation.
100%.
And that's where you can really check it. So your scenario, for example, I know you felt that in your heart, but after that fact of that relationship, everyone who was a spiritual elder to you, if you had have asked them, probably would have said, I don't know, like, I don't know if you want to confirm that right now.
Yep.
So
But
that would be my
but it
advice
doesn't have
to
to
other
be-
people in
It
community.
doesn't have to be a spiritual elder. That's a great option. But
Yeah, friends as
even
well.
recently in your life, without getting into too much detail, there's been times where you've thought that something is sent by God, and then you've spoken to us, and we've shown you a different objective, and a different perspective, and you've changed your ways, and it's been fruitful. I guess it does come onto like how we interpret things, because we won't always interpret it right, even if it is audible.
Yep.
For me personally, I feel like, weirdly enough, I just know. It's so overwhelming that like in my head it's like it can't be anything else. That's my personal experience. But I also do like to confirm it with like signs. So I'll pray to God and be like, right, like, really? Like, you want me to do that? Or that's the right way? All right, give me a sign. Like, as simple as, bro, this might sound like, it might sound silly, but I'll be like, all right, like, if a blue car passes me in the next minute, or like if I see, like, sometimes you'll see a word literally say, like, it'll be like, advertisement for a kebab shop. It's like, don't go there, go here. You know what I mean? Like, I know that's a silly example at the top of my head, but it's like, I just looked around and I said, don't do it. Sign just said it in front of me on a bus or on a kebab shop sign saying, do not go there or do not do that. It's like, for me, that's like a confirmation from God. And it's like too weird to be a coincidence.
I get you. We just got, there's a good verse, 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. It says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. So I guess the interpretation of that would mean that like if something was meant for you, there'd be, no confusion. Or there'd be kind of like, as you said, Chris, like a peace. And so I think it's good to like check ourselves when, we are faced with a decision, like how does it make us feel? I think it's tricky though, because I believe that for me, like in relationships, for example, I've always had commitment phobia and anxiety. So, even when something I feel like is good, I still get that like that worried feeling and that uncomfortable, that unease. So yeah, I think there's a difference between like, prayerfully going about something, and then sometimes you do have to tangibly do things to, see if it's something internal that you need to work on as well. But through God, I think anything's possible.
But on your point, you are also in your past, you've been better lately, but in your past, you are a bit impulsive too.
Yeah.
In your past. So maybe something that we could encourage is that if you do feel like you have a sign from God, kind of just take a minute, let it simmer.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be long, but even a couple of days, a week, just because if God wants you to do something, He's gonna, what's the word?
Persist.
He's gonna persist.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like, literally like
Moses with
overwhelming.
the burning bush.
Like, yeah, bro, it's gonna
Yeah,
be like
yeah.
overwhelming. Like, all right, nah, maybe it's not. Next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll
Next
stay
day,
in
you're
your
like,
heart.
all right, so I can't actually look away from this.
Yeah.
Then this must be a sign.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, oh, that's a sign. Shit, okay, I got to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
God
So-
takes time with things.
God takes time, so
To
I
build,
think
yeah.
we should also follow His lead and take time when we do get a message or we think we have a message.
100%.
I love all these stories because it just goes to show, like with all the elements we just spoke about, again, tying back to prayer, but it goes to show like the intentionality of God. and how he's thinking about you no matter what you're doing, right? And whether you're going your own path, listening to this, whether you're choosing God, whether you're following God, he loves all of us the exact same. And
Nice, that's good.
and tying, like, we've seen that in our own lives. We've seen that through our friends and family, even people who aren't pursuing God.
Yeah.
He goes so far out of his way to give you an opportunity or a chance, not imposing on your free will, to be like, hey, look, I'm going to show you that I'm here. You can decide whether you think it's coincidence, scenarios, whatever, but I'm going to make it obvious. And I think the perfect story for that in the Bible that can relate to people, just as an example, is Jonah, right? You guys kind of know this story, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the locker room chat version of the Jonah story in the Bible, to paraphrase, right? So Jonah was a guy, and God was,
Jonah was a guy.
and God was after him, just like he's after every single one of us. We all have a calling and a purpose. He loves every single one of us. Jonah was going his own way. He's like, you know what, God? I don't even know. I'm gonna choose to go my own way. He had a calling to go reach this certain town, this city. This is kind of similar to your story, Jamie, where you want to go your own way. You keep pushing and fighting, going against God, but God's calling you, and he'll do anything that it takes to show you. And in the story of Jonah, he went the complete opposite direction. So let's say God was calling him to go north. He's like, nah, screw you, God. I'm going south because I don't want to listen to you. I don't even know. Started going south, ended up on a fishing boat, just minding his own business, delaying God's calling for him.
Wow, back to the fishing.
And back to the fishing. Long story short, ended up in a big swell, got knocked overboard, and got swallowed by a whale. And he got spat out back where he left.
Wow.
So he had to then make the decision the second time. So God didn't interfere. He said, now I've recorrected you. Which way are you going to choose? And then he knew it was from God, went and followed his calling. So that story is just a representation for people to attach their own lives. It's like, you can go whichever path you want and you have your own free will. We're not telling you what to do. God will never force you to do anything. But you have a calling, and he will find a way to reveal it to you over and over and over again. It's up to you to you eventually say, all right, God, look, there's too many coincidences. I'm going to not even commit to you. Say, look, I'm going to explore this path and see if you are
Just
who
be
you say you
open
are.
to
That's
it.
all God wants as well.
And I think that's kind of what happened to you in a way, Jamie. You went your own way, and God said, no, I'm going to bring you back.
I'm sure we've all had an experience with that. At
100%.
some point in life that we thought, nah, look at me, I can do this.
I'm invincible.
You know, I'm invincible. And then
Young 20-year-old boys.
you get humbled.
untouchable.
God humbles you. And sometimes you actually got to fall a lot, which,
Really
you know, Jamie knows well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to fall. Not
gotta hit
everyone.
rock bottom.
But sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to see, okay, I actually can't do this myself. And I do need to go with God. And when you go with God, anything's possible.
And as young men,
you
we're
are
actually
invincible.
prideful. So I think in a way, it's almost in our nature to be egotistical, to be like, you know what, God, I'm going to show you I can do it by myself. Like, it's almost like this. No one's coming to
It's
save me.
like
I wanna,
society pushes this
You just
agenda.
wanna
Like,
prove.
you can do everything yourself.
you want to
like,
prove yourself.
Yeah.
You're
Bro,
like,
I can't-
Nah, it's all on me. I'm the hero of my own story.
Yeah.
I can do everything. Like, I back myself. If you believe in yourself enough, you can accomplish anything.
You don't need anyone. You don't need anything. I got this.
I can't like begin to describe how there's this weird piece about when you're following God's path. Like, you know, as a Christian, I think people think like atheists think, oh, you know, if I become a Christian, my life's gonna be perfect. Like, no, it's not gonna be perfect at all. But you're gonna 100% be following the calling that God has for you, which is much better than your own, because, you know, when we do things, as you just said, Bayley, in the story of Jonah, by our own strength, it doesn't lead us to the path that we're actually destined for. And so what I found is, since like becoming a Christian and really trying to follow God's path, is that, yeah, like no matter what happens, and I've had some bad things happen being a Christian, as you guys know, bro, it's the weirdest thing. Like, I could be thinking I'm about to die. I'm so peaceful.
Bro, same.
I'm just so peaceful.
I'm
I can't
same.
describe it. It's like I wake up, I reckon, because I've been getting like these nighttime attacks. And every night I go to bed, I'm like, oh, it might happen, but I'm chill. Like, whatever, it happens sometimes. Happens. I'm like, might die today, might not, but I'm chill. Like,
That's
it's just the
crazy,
weirdest
bro.
thing, bro. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm not like downplaying this, because you guys know I've been through some hectic stuff recently.
Yeah.
Really bad. But as I said, bro, kind of what you said, what you
Supernatural
guys
peace.
said. Supernatural peace, peace beyond all understanding. I always say this, but it's true.
And
So, yeah.
And I want to emphasize, and we've said this again and again, just because you walk with God doesn't mean your life's going to be easy. It's going to be magical. Everything's going to work out. A lot of the time, even within the Bible, a lot of the time the people that did follow God had harder lives.
Yeah.
For many different reasons. So we're not saying he's a magical genie and you're going to rub it and everything's going to be perfect. But
Isn't it funny, just while you're on that topic, that I don't know what algorithm people are in, but in my algorithm right now on Instagram Reels, it's like people now know that to become the character you're meant to be, you have to the more you get ripped to shreds, the more hardship, the more trial.
Yeah, bro.
That actually is what develops the characteristics that
100%.
allow you to become who you're meant to be. So it's funny when I'm just tying that to what you were just saying,
No,
Chris,
you're
where
right.
becoming Christian actually doesn't make your life easier
Makes it
because
harder.
God is going to be like, okay, I can see your potential
yeah.
and I know what you need to go through to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to walk you through it, but I'll be with you every single step of the way. It'll be
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
Hard.
but who you become through that is
gonna
way
be
better than what
greater.
you did if you had an easy life.
Right.
So that's
So
actually
true.
a
Write
good
that one
thing.
down, Em.
So
That's
true.
actually a good thing. I was just thinking
That's
that
a
right
verse.
That was
now.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So what's the home hitting message?
I think to, I guess, end this episode and leave you guys with like a message at the end, I think we can go with a Bible verse and then sum it up. You know, there's a Bible verse, Zechariah 13:9. It says, "This third I'll put into the fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name and I'll answer them. I will say they are my people and they will say the Lord is our God." And so this verse shows how God refines his people through their faith and their strength and having a relationship with him. So that's pretty powerful.
That's so
one to
good.
end
Guys,
the episode with.
it just goes to show from everything we've said, doesn't matter who you are, what your walk of life, whether you're a Christian, you're religious at all, you're doing the wrong thing, God has a purpose for you and you are a child of God and God loves you. And if you're open to hearing him or learning about him or walking with him, you will develop into a character and a person that will be greater than you could ever imagine. And it's not going to be easy, as we said. There are going to be highs, there are going to be lows. But at the end of the day, if you walk with God, then your life's going to be amazing. And the person you'll be is who God has made you to be.
Let's go.
Amen.
That's
Let's
a perfect
go.
way to wrap up. Hope you
Hope
guys
you guys
enjoyed
enjoyed
that
that.
one, and we'll see you on the next one. Let's go.
Peace. Amen.